Hello everybody, welcome to the July edition of the Safe at Home Times. I hope everybody is having a wonderful summer, staying cool. So what I want to cover in this John's block is a real estate term that I've come to know, and I don't know if I love it, but it's a thing. Anyway, appraisals. What is an appraisal? So once a contract has been signed, both the buyer and seller have agreed to the terms and a purchase price of a property. If a buyer is financing, that is, using a bank's money or using a lender to finance a portion of the purchase, that lender will hire a third party called an appraiser to come out and make sure that the agreed upon purchase price between the buyer and seller is actually in line with the actual value. So it's a determination of value to make sure that it's in line with the market and not too inflated. So just to give a scenario, if a property is, say, listed at $200,000 and there's a huge flurry of activity and the price gets bumped up to, maybe people go over asking price and it ends up landing on $210,000. The buyer is using a bank and getting some financing. The bank is going to make sure that it's actually worth $210,000. So what they'll do is send an appraiser out to look at a little bit of the condition of the property, but more if there have been any significant upgrades or additional square footage that's maybe different than the tax records. But more importantly, they'll use what are called comps, or the past sales of properties that are similar in size, features, number of bedrooms, acreage. Lots of different factors go into an appraiser selecting their comps, but they look at what has recently sold. Now, an appraiser can come back and say, absolutely, this house is worth $210,000 based on, it is actually worth $210,000. That's great. It appraises for that value, no issue. But an appraisal could come back and say, actually, we've determined it's really only worth $205,000 based on past sales and what it is. So at that point, a couple different things can happen. A seller can decide to lower to that appraised value. They can say, okay, we had it listed at 200, it appraised at 205. We had agreed on 210, but we'll bring it down to 205. Okay, that's fine. And the lender will be satisfied with that. If a seller does not want to come down, if they say, nope, you said you're going to buy it for 210, you're buying it for 210, the bank is still only going to give as much as that appraised value, based on that appraised value, so 205. In that scenario, the buyer would have to kick in an extra $5,000 to get to that $210,000. And actually, they'd be further in the hole because they don't have any equity in it then. They're paying above. Or another possibility is that buyer and seller come to terms and negotiate a sort of in-between. Or a buyer has the right to walk away and their earnest money is returned. So an appraisal is it's not the same as an inspection where you're actually looking at the material properties of the house, checking for leaky sinks and stuff like that. An appraiser determines the value of the property based on recent sales and histories. Now that is used not only in the transaction process, but appraisals are also used for insurance purposes, replacement values, and also for property taxes. So multiple uses for the appraisal, but they are an integral part. Sellers, before they decide to list their homes, can certainly get an appraisal to kind of give them some pricing guidelines. But more often than not, it's a buyer's lender that's going to be requiring an appraisal, and that's when that happens. So any further questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Have a wonderful rest of the month.